hear that sound? That's the sound of the portal closing, which is a happy day for some, but it's a dark, dark day for me. A lot of atonement to happen on tonight's show, and my voice gets ever the more somber even as I talk about it. But that's a little bit later in the show. We are jam-packed high atop a sold-out downtown Nashville, Tennessee Late Kick Live for Thursday, May 2nd, the year of our Lord 2024. Well, we got, I think, Morgan Wallen's like live right across the river right now, and traffic has been a nightmare here today. But don't worry, we're live, and we're good, and you're good because you're not downtown in Nashville right now. I've got a whole lot jam-packed into tonight's show. So Deion Sanders has said a lot of things. A lot's going on out there at Colorado. Some people are saying it's trash on one side. Some people are saying it's trash on the other side. I have not said a word about it. I will lead the show with it tonight. I've got some things to talk about in regards to me and certain predictions I made and the transfer portal. This will not be a fun evening for me. It'll be fun for some of you, though. But that's the policy here at Pate State. And since I don't have a co-host, I have to enforce my own policies on myself. I've got 4 underrated teams I need to talk to you about tonight. I've got an entire view on Georgia. I got the Ohio State mood tracker. I've got actual portal intel because there are guys moving and scheduling visits even as we go on air right now. So, yeah, it may be early May and casuals may be talking off-season. Not here. Jam-packed tonight. They're watching us in Slidell, Louisiana, Pine Top, Arizona, Abilene, Kansas, and Odessa, Texas. Thank you guys so much. Just a paper pop in advance of what should be a memorable show. Some of you still aren't following on the socials at Late Kick Josh, and I don't know what to tell you. There's some stuff you're missing over there if you're not following. That's all I'm going to say. There's some stuff you're missing over there if you're not following, especially that Instagram story from time to time. And I expect some news in that Instagram story within the next week regarding some things we're going to do in the future. But that's for the future. Let's talk about the here and now. Okay, so Deion in Colorado in the news. Max Olson's in the news. Max Olson from The Athletic had the audacity to go and do his job, and he wrote an article over on The Athletic about the guys that have transferred out of Colorado. And I thought it was very well done. Obviously, some people on the Colorado side think that it's very one-sided. It's pseudo-journalism. It's gotcha journalism. It's whatever they want to call it. It was telling stories from guys whose voices otherwise would never have been heard. And so here's the thing about Colorado and Deion Sanders. They've got a platform, a big one, a megaphone. Nothing that they want disseminated fails to get disseminated. But if you were a guy who was a holdover from the previous regime and then Deion comes in and you're cut loose, no one's going to hear your voice. Max Olson gave those guys a voice. It's a long feature. It's still probably on the front page of college football over on The Athletic. So I would encourage you to go read it. It's not some definitive end-all, be-all like gavel bang on the program, but I think it was a really, really good look. I'll tell you this, I learned a whole lot I didn't know. I learned a whole lot about a whole lot of guys I didn't know much about. And I cover this sport and follow it year-round. So I thought Max Olson did a good job. Other people did not, including some people inside the program. So to save you some time, there's been a lot of sniping back and forth, people taking shots at Colorado, Deion responding to some of them, Shedeur Sanders responding to some of them. So, you know, ironically, I don't have a whole lot to say about that because I just don't like to get into it. I do have a few things to say about how I feel. So I'm reading the Max Olson piece, and I think a lot of it sucks. Just the details, just the overall way that things have been handled out there. I'm going to get to why that doesn't matter in a second, so just hold on before you go type it in all caps in the comments section. I think it sucks. What I think sucks about it is not that Deion came in and cut a lot of guys loose. That's going to happen. It's going to happen more so now in today's college football, and especially more so at a program like Colorado, maybe than in years past it would have anywhere else. I'm a believer that doing business and having basic respect for humans don't have to be mutually exclusive. So if I'm Deion, I would have come into Colorado and cut a lot of kids loose. I don't necessarily know that I would have gone about it the exact way he did. Now, here's the follow-up. I'll say it so you don't have to. Well, Josh, you don't have to worry about it. No one's giving you the keys to a program. You're not Deion Sanders. He is. You're right about all that. I'm not refuting any of that. I'm telling you, since this is my show, and I presume you come here to listen to me talk about how I feel about things, I hated those details, those aspects of it. But here is part 2 of that now. Part 2 is this is essentially semi-pro ball now. I said this when Deion took the job. I said that something he was about to do was going to really exclamate something that I don't think a lot of folks realized was happening with college football. a lot of things were happening in the way of players' rights. A lot of things were happening with NIL. A lot of things, in other words, were happening that benefited players. This has been happening for a while. This is not Deion's doing, by the way. This is a college football thing, but it led to Deion. It led to something he's doing. So we enter the era of NIL in the portal, right? And guys are making money legally that they used to not be able to make, and guys have freedom to move, and guys are basically getting a whole lot of benefit that comes with being a high-level college football player. And so you got cotton candy in one hand, and you got lollipop in the other hand, and for a little while, it was like Summer of Love vibes. It was, man, what could go wrong? Well, here's what could go wrong. When you get that on the front end, there are going to be some things on the back end that maybe don't taste so good and don't sound and look so good, and that is cutthroat business being done, maybe at your expense. And so when Deion took the job at Colorado and he made no bones about what he was about to do, I said on the show, I remember Colin and Jesse, I said it like 2 years ago, some stuff that makes you very uncomfortable is probably about to happen, but this is the era for it to happen in. You claimed, some people claimed that they wanted this structure, and they wanted a semi-pro model for college athletics, and so that's the downside. You wanted the benefits of an adult, you're going to get treated like an adult, and boss man doesn't have to be nice to you, doesn't have to care about your feelings. I could look on from Nashville and I could look out at Boulder and say, man, I wish he'd be a little nicer about this. But all that is my opinion. He doesn't have to be that way if he doesn't want to be that way. And so that's how it is. My point is, regardless of what anyone's opinion on it is, including mine. But I saw someone earlier today ask me about Colorado's program. I was going to talk about it on the show anyway, but I think it was Blake. Blake goes back and forth with us a fair amount. Blake said something along the lines of, what do you think about Colorado's program? I don't think Colorado has a program. I think Colorado has an experiment currently underway in Boulder. Like, that's how I view them. These numbers are insane. Deion brought in 72 guys in the class of 2023 when you account for recruiting and portal. Do you understand what I just said? You got 85 scholarships. He brought in 72 guys in one cycle. Just a mind-blowing, unheard of number. 44 of them are gone a year later. That is 61% of the 72 he brought in. He brought in a team. They portaled in and recruited in an entire football team. And 61% of them are gone a year later. Those aren't guys he inherited, by the way. Those are guys that he picked. And his staff picked and they brought in. So 61% of those are gone. 34 of 51 transfers are gone. 10 of 21 recruits are gone, including the two highest ranked guys. So it's not a program. That's not a program, at least the likes of which we've ever known. That's an experiment. They are trying it a different way than it's ever been done before. I have no idea where the synergy and togetherness and culture and basically all the intangibles that go to define a program even come from, going about it that way. It ain't my program, it's his program. But I will not really call it a program as much as I view it an experiment. But I'll tell you what I do appreciate. There's some stuff here I don't like. What I do appreciate is Deion Sanders is authentically himself. And I don't have to like it, all aspects of it. Some of it I do like, some of it I don't like. I don't have to like all of it. But he's authentically himself. We do have ourselves here a guy who does not have to apologize to anyone. He doesn't need the job. And so for better or for worse, if you're just in this for entertainment, if you just want to prop the feet up and pop the popcorn and sit back and put on your 3D glasses and enjoy a show, Colorado and Deion, that's your show. Here's my final thought on it. I think I said this once before. I'll say it again. One of the things that frustrates me the most is when people run their mouth and they never have to back it up. Well, that is not Deion Sanders. That is not Colorado. As long as they got to tee it up in the fall, as long as they got to play 12 in the fall, I'm fine with anything that's said in May. Run your mouth all you want to. You can represent yourself any way you want to and carry yourself any way you want to, as long as you got to play it. As long as fall Saturdays are going to come and you're going to be involved 12 times, fall Saturdays will tell the story. Colin, could you throw their schedule up one more time? Because they're entering the Big 12 this year. They do not have an easy schedule by Big 12 standards. A lot of you have noticed, though, they don't open in Big 12 play, do they? They open against North Dakota State. Just that's a game. And then they go to Nebraska week 2, got Colorado State on the road week 3, and then it's Big 12 play. And it's Big 12 play, and it's Big 12 play. And what I've said about the Big 12, as it relates to Colorado, I'll say one more time. I think they could have an extremely tough time this year. And the reason is not because of anyone's attitude. The reason is not because anyone's tweeted. It's because I don't think Colorado has a program. And conversely, they're going to play week after week. Kansas State, Cincinnati, Utah, Kansas. They're going to play week after week against teams that have known for a long time they're not recruiting 5 stars. They're not landing the best of the best. Hardly any of these teams even crack the top 20 in recruiting. That's not a good thing for you, actually. That's a bad thing, because while they may not have a ton of first-round NFL talent on their roster, they've more than learned how to make up for that. It's called culture. It's basically like playing 8 or 9 really, really tightly wound rubber band balls. There's no looseness. Like, they are rock solid, and everyone's arm in arm, and everyone's together, and you're not playing a whole bunch of true freshmen. You're playing a bunch of 4th and 5th year guys, and they've been through the wars, and they've been there together, and you're playing grown men who know how to play team football. And you're essentially mercenarying a team together every year to try and go win in that environment. It's a great experiment. It's fun to watch. It's a great experiment. No one's ever tried to do this before. I don't have ultra high hopes for what they'll accomplish this fall. And if it starts going sideways this fall, you better be really mentally tough. If you're mentally tough enough to talk in spring and then folks start beating you upside the head, you better be ready to take it in the fall. Because if you're not, that is the longest 12 weeks that you will ever live in your life, at least in terms of sports. That is a long 12 weeks, man. If you're already out of bowl contention and you look up and, man, we're not even to Halloween yet. Yeah, people suffer that every year. The difference is the teams that already find themselves out of relevancy and contention by Halloween normally don't keep the crosshairs on their back throughout Thanksgiving. And that will be Colorado no matter how the year goes this year. Their over-under win total is 5.5. So if they make a bowl game, they have hit the over. Will they? Will they, anyone? Let's move on. I do want to mix in one update here. Gas station recruiting wars update. I don't have a major update for you tonight. I will have a major update for you Sunday because big meetings are happening tomorrow. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, which is fair because not everyone can tune into every show this time of year, I don't know what else to tell you. We have about a 9-way gas station recruitment bidding war currently underway. And I am fielding offers, and I am listening to proposals, and I am meeting face-to-face with, dare I say, management from some of these companies, and there is a favorite, and that favorite has shifted a few times, but big meetings coming over the next couple of days. Where will we, as a Pate State family, where will we take our talents? And how much free stuff can I get you guys? Because I know gas ain't free. I know it ain't. But I also know that, man, some of those Academy gift cards have come in handy in the past. Gas cards probably come in handy as well. So I'm working for us. Don't worry. I'm working for us. We're going to have some fun announcements coming up. In the meantime, I can't believe it. Jesse, Colin, you would never do this to me, but I got people in my life, okay, who claim to be friends. They claim to be my friends. These people, in some cases, one of these people have had me in their wedding, and yet they're calling me at 7:13 on a Thursday night, knowing full well where I am, or at least I think I do. You think you know someone, man. Thank you guys for being more respectful than some of my quote-unquote friends are to me. The college football playoff seems to have some issues before it gets off the ground here. You know, we're entering the expansion era, the 12-team era. And I've seen some people, Ross Dellinger most recently, writing some very fascinating literature on the old internet about what some of the hang-ups already are behind the scenes. And I am telling you, as I've told you many times, it's like yeah, absolutely. Like, really? It took this long? Stop me where you've heard this before. First-round rematches, going to be a problem. And this is just Dellinger quoting anonymous sources, most likely commissioners from different conferences. First-round rematches could be a problem. Yeah, they could. Since 2014, if we plugged in the new format, since 2014, we would have had 7 first-round rematches of games that either happened in the regular season or as recently as conference championship weekend. And oh, by the way, that's not even to broach the whole 3-game threat, as I like to call it. And that's that situation where since everyone's doing away with divisions, which I'm okay with, You have the threat of teams playing each other 3 times. Here's how easy that would be. Bama and Georgia play this year. Let's say Bama wins the first game. Let's say they face off in Atlanta. Georgia wins the second game. Whatever, I don't care. But both of them make the playoff. They could face off a third time. 3 times. Ohio State and Michigan. You're not even talking about long shots here. Ohio State and Michigan, not only are they going to play the last week of the season this year and for the first time potentially play again in the Big Ten title game because divisions are gone, they could play a third time in the playoffs. So yeah, I'd call that a potential hang-up. Auto bids, by the way, here's another hang-up. That actually is the end of a sentence. Auto bids themselves are a hang-up because I hate auto bids. But some of you do support auto bids because I know what the proposal is on your side. I've listened to you guys. And you make sense. I just don't like it. The proposal, by the way, for auto bids is we got to make sure we let certain teams in from certain parts of the country for the sake of inclusion, or else it just becomes an SEC Big Ten Invitational. Well, yeah, that's where most of the good teams are. That's where most of the high-level teams are. I don't really know how to counter that. If we're actually doing it the way of the auto bid, that's the definition of an invitational, is it not? You're completely taking the ice cream cone that is merit and putting it in the microwave, and it melts all over the place. So anyway, auto bids are going to lead to inferior teams getting first-round buys. I don't need to take you back any further than 2021. I got nothing against Pitt. I got nothing against Pat Narduzzi. But the fact that the 2021 Pitt Panthers would have had a first-round bye, despite being ranked 12th in the country at the end of the year, is a joke. It's ridiculous. And it's not deserved. It's only deserved because they happen to be plopped down in an inferior conference. And conversely, I take that same team, put them in the Big Ten or the SEC, they're not sniffing the conference title. So for many reasons, I'm not a fan of auto bids, but there's one that a lot of people are starting to realize. Also starting to be realized by the rest of the country, and had the drum beaten on this program for a long time, is the whole G5 matter. This has been a hot topic around here lately because I am the devil reincarnate, at least when it comes to certain G5 circles, because I've had the audacity to claim that maybe it's not so smart to have 134 teams playing for the same title. Maybe we ought to compartmentalize this thing. Maybe we ought to have tiers and not pretend like South Alabama plays the same sport as Alabama. South Alabama getting tired of me taking shots at them. I'm not taking shots. I just happen to always have South Alabama at the forefront of my brain, tip of my tongue, etc. But anyway, so here's one of the hurdles that a lot of folks are starting to realize about the new 12-team playoff. The G5 is going to get a team in no matter what, at least one team in no matter what. Why is that a problem, you may ask? 6 out of the last 10 highest-rated G5 conference champs finished outside the top 12. You know what that means, friends? That means that you're going to have a team ranked 17th, as Memphis was in 2019, make the playoff. Tulane, 2022, finished the season ranked 16th. But Josh, they beat USC. They finished the season ranked 16th. I don't care what happened after they made it in. Last year, Liberty finished the season 23rd. But since that's the highest-ranked G5 conference champ, guess what? Liberty, barely in the top 25, is in the playoff if this current format was in place last year. Again, it's a joke. It's a complete joke. To me, at least, in the way I prefer things. Personally, I also wonder how strength of record will be interpreted. I had Stats and Info hand me a very peculiar number today. Second paper pop this segment. That's how you know it's bad. We don't have preseason rankings out yet. Even the JP poll's in hibernation. But we do have a partnership with FanDuel. And so I had FanDuel just kick me over the preseason odds to win the playoff. It's not perfect, but it's a fairly decent snapshot if you want to loosely, just kind of facially understand what the top 25 could look like this year. So we take the top 25 in the FanDuel odds to win the playoff. The SEC this year will have 90 matchups where their teams face top 25 opponents. The Big 12 will have 32 of those. Georgia Tech, actually, I'm going to pause, Jesse, because I want to make sure I get it right because we may clip this later. You know what? Forget about the Big 12 piece. Scratch. The SEC in 2024 will have 90 matchups where their teams face top 25 opposition. Georgia Tech is the only other team in all of Power 4 that fits that description. You take the rest of the country, and there's only one team that faces at least 6 top 25 teams. I think that was the stat there. What a botchery of a stat that I delivered because I wrote it down wrong. 9 SEC teams, 9 of them this year, face 6+ top 25 teams. Georgia Tech's the only one outside of the entire SEC and the rest of the Power 4 that fits that description. So, yeah, some issues here, some hurdles. Now, I know my audience, and I know not all of you think that these are issues. In fact, some people think the fact that Pitt in 2021, despite being ranked 12th, would have had a first-round bye as a conference champ, they think that's a good thing because they think that incentivizes winning your conference. I think there are other ways to incentivize winning conferences. That's my personal opinion. But I digress. Secondly, you think it's a good thing that the G5 will have representation no matter how bad, relatively speaking, their conference champ is, highest-ranked conference champ. We just disagree on these things. It has happened before. But it will create a lot of conversation because I am a pretty firm believer that even as we sit here, it's May 2nd, and this thing's happening this year, I still believe it's sneaking up on a lot of people. There's so much going on outside of, the fence of college football. There's so much going on with off-the-field headlines. It's almost like playoff expansion. A lot of you wanted it for a long time. It's almost taken a back seat, and all of a sudden it's going to be here. And people are going to find themselves in week 8 saying, hold on, wait, the rules are what now? Who gets to make it? Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. Now, some of us, myself, and several of you, we don't really focus on the playoffs so much as we do the regular season. And tailgating, really huge in these parts, Pate State notwithstanding. I love when we go to games every Saturday and we meander our way through the tailgating areas because I get to count how many Academy Sports and Outdoors tents there are and how many Academy chairs there are. And then just the gold mine is when we walk through a tailgate and not only do you offer us food, which always comes in handy, have vegan options for Gelby, please, but not only do you offer us food, some of you say, hey, and then I'll look over and you point to the back of the chair, Academy. It's just brand synergy. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing when we have it. And you can have it by doing something as simple as just shopping at Academy Sports and Outdoors. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, I'd love to, but the closest one's like 90 miles up the road. That's true, could be true for you, but the closest internet connection is maybe even in the palm of your hand right now, or on the desktop over there, academy.com. They got your hookup. Academy, longtime partner of ours. They help keep the show free, and we sincerely appreciate them. Academy doesn't have gas stations, or else they would be in the gas station recruiting war. But Academy doesn't have to be in any recruiting war. We're already in business with them. So they did it. They did it the easy way. They got in. They beat the rush, and we appreciate them for that. This is going to be a bad segment for me. This part of the show, I'm not even going to peel the label off the water. That's how distraught I am. So public spring water, this is your time. You didn't pay for it, but here's some placement on the set. I would ask my family and friends to please turn the show off for the next 10 minutes. This is just going to be horrific. So the first thing I want to do, Colin, I want you to cut all this out when we put the clip up later. I do want to tell you, before I go down a dark, lonely road of owning a bad prediction, that there is stuff happening in the portal today. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get you the latest portal intel, and then I'm going to just do some very regrettable things on air. So a lot happening in the transfer portal. The door's closed, so there's no more movement happening into the portal. However, guys who are already in the portal can stay in there as long as they want to until they find a new home. Jason Zandamela was a name we had been watching. He was a top interior offensive lineman in the 2024 cycle. He committed to USC, went through spring. He's already left USC. Number 2 overall available player in the spring portal. 6'3", 306. We thought Florida had a commanding lead there. We knew he wanted to get closer to home. Well, he's committed to Florida. And so that's the number 7 overall transfer, number 1 interior offensive line in portal. And he was number 46 overall kid in the 2024 cycle. So that's a nice little pickup. That's a nice little pickup there for the Florida Gators staff right here at the end of the portal cycle. Staying in the Sunshine State for a second. UCF, man, has anyone been paying attention to this? UCF and Gus Malzahn, they're rolling. They're rolling in the portal. UCF, I was talking with Chuck Oliver on his show today, and I said, it'd be one thing if they got Big 12 admittance and then they just rested on their laurels. They said, hey, we're in the Big 12 now. Let's cash a bigger check. We're good. UCF's done the opposite. UCF saw a crack in the Power 4 door, and then they kicked the thing down, and they got themselves in the Big 12, and then they said, we're reinvesting. And they got an immaculate new facility that they're about to break ground on. But in the meantime, signing highest-ranked recruiting classes ever, highest-ranked portal classes ever. Ja'Cory Brown, the quarterback from Miami, he's committed to UCF. So that gives Gus Malzahn, by the way, Ja'Cory Brown, and KJ Jefferson is there now. We were just down there with Malzahn last month, and he said it off air and on air. He said there is no other Cam Newton, okay? There never will be another one of him. But in terms of raw skill set, that's what we're looking to acquire. And we got some of it in KJ. Ja'Cory Brown's got a lot of what has been very dangerous if Gus Malzahn has it at his disposal in the past. So there's that. There's Penny Boone, who was the running back who was at Louisville for a hot minute. But you probably know him if you watch a lot of MAC ball as the MAC Offensive Player of the Year at Toledo last year. Running back, over 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns. And these guys are just making their way to Orlando, not to go to Disney World either, but they are going down there to have fun. So Central Florida, again, not leaning back in the lawn chair now that they're a Power 4 resident. Peyton Woodyard is in the portal. He was a DB at Alabama, 4-star safety out of the past cycle. He was an early enrollee, so he went through spring there. I'm a fan of Peyton Woodyard. Fan of him, family, just really good dude. Oregon is the clear favorite here. Getting crystal ball predictions from Oregon even as we speak. Oregon's currently got the number 3 portal class. If they add him, and I expect that they will, that would be the 7th blue chipper just in the portal class for Oregon this cycle. Not only are they adding starters, like I don't know if Woodyard would start for them as much as they're just now portaling in some depth. It's just a fascinating thing to watch because that's something only the big boys do. Tacario Davis is not leaving Arizona. How about this? He remains at Arizona. He's a 6'4", 185-pound corner. Second team all Pac-12 last year. This is fascinating. So Brent Brennan comes there from San Jose State, and the immediate fear amongst several, me included, was Noah Fafita, the quarterback, was going to leave, and McMillan, the big wide receiver, was going to leave. Davis is their best defensive player. Thought they may lose him. They kept all 3 of them. And I don't know that that's a story that's getting enough attention right now because Arizona's, a little on the back burner, not a prime national championship contending team, at least we don't think. But that's a big deal. Those guys can change games this year. And their over-under win total, even with the new staff, is sneakily all the way up there at 7.5. I know they had some attrition, offensive line in particular. I think they had some attrition there, but let's see what old Arizona can do this year. They kept some big-time players there. If you need DB help, I'm not saying that it's the end-all, be-all, it's the cure-all or whatever, but there is at least some worthwhile options still to pick through in the portal when it comes to DB. King Mack was at Penn State, for example. That's a former top 100 kid in the 2023 cycle. Bama is going to get a visit there. I know Ole Miss has been making some moves for the kid out of Houston. Really late this afternoon, crystal ball favorite there, according to Matt Zenitz. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of portal movement still happening. It's just guys aren't entering it anymore. So keep an eye, because you know as well as I do, we watch these games in the fall, and it gets to the fourth quarter, and it's like, can someone get a fingertip on a ball to knock it incomplete? Can someone make one more yard? And it could very well be the guy you just picked up. Like Penny Boone could go to UCF and decide 2 games this fall. So you got to be paying attention to this stuff now, especially if any of you bet on this. You better be paying attention to what guys are doing in the portal. Okay. So that's that. This is a terrible, terrible part of the show. I don't like being wrong. It's terrible. I know no one likes being wrong, but I really hate it. Like at a cellular level, being wrong, Making wrong predictions on this show is something that I detest beyond all imagination. But I remember long ago when I was down in Columbus, Georgia, working in the fabric warehouse, I would listen to sports talk radio all day, sun up to whatever time we got out of there, close to sundown. And it would always entertain me. But I used to always get mad about the sports media industry that they got to call out coaches for being wrong or losing or making bad decisions and play calls, but they never got held accountable. You could make as many wrong predictions as you wanted to. You can make as many outlandish statements as you wanted to because you never had to have a press conference. No one ever held you accountable. And I always said to myself, man, if I ever get myself a microphone, I'm going to do that. And so here at Pate State, we believe in bullying. We believe in holding the powerful to account, and we believe in verbal harassment if it takes that. But mainly, we believe that if you make a prediction and it crashes and burns, you got to own it. And I hate this. I hate doing this because let's just be real. I'm not wrong a whole lot. Not a lot of head nods in here, but I'm going to say it. But when I whiff on a prediction, I will own it. And recently, I made one of the worst in the history of this show. And so, as is tradition, we got to pop on the clown nose. Roll it, Colin.
You are about to see the harsh, violent reality of the no rules transfer portal era on full display later this month. I am not overstating this. It will be the wildest transfer portal era that you've ever seen. And it's going to completely gut some of your teams. Just calling it like it is.
Well, teams did not get gutted. Chaos was not seen. I think I know why this happened to me. I think I know why I got misled. I don't think I'll let it happen again. But we whiffed. I whiffed fantastically on this. I know a lot of you listen to this show, and you probably heard me say that, and you probably went to work the next day, and you told your buddies something similar. And now your buddies are making fun of you because you were dumb enough in this case to listen to me. And so I am trying to have a little fun with it, but I'm a little angry that this happened. So I'm owning it. I'm owning it. We screw up around here. We're going to own it. We're going to rebuild. We will be better for this. In time, we will surge. We will thrive. But as Meemaw once told me, sometimes a man's got to be down bad today before he can be up big tomorrow. And I am down bad today. So thought it was going to be chaotic. It was not. And we screwed it up bad. So there it is. I hope that someone's enjoying this because I'm not at all. Can we move on? Yes. Okay, please, let's move on. Oh, it's like poison. I have to wash it down. Oh, it's like the content creation version of passing a kidney stone. That's what it's like to have to admit you were wrong this fantastically about something. Never again, hopefully, never again. Who are the most underrated teams this fall? Well, I don't know that quite yet, but I can tell you a few I have my eye on. West Virginia is one of them. West Virginia, I know there's a lot of drama and intrigue up there about whether we'll get the coal black uniforms this year, and I am paying attention to that with bated breath. But they were 9-4 last year, yet their over-under win total is only 6.5 for this upcoming season. So I look at that and I think, shouldn't that be a little north of 7, maybe? Possibly, I don't know. They're 8th on defense, or at least they've got 8 returning with starting experience. They're 24th in overall returning production, and they're 3rd offensively in returning production. Like Garrett Green's a really solid dual threat quarterback. Accuracy needs to improve, but last year they won 9 games. They were only 50th in turnover margin. So sometimes teams overachieve because they're just like plus 20 for whatever reason in turnover margin, and they crash back to earth the next year. I don't think West Virginia is going to crash back to earth. They got a really tough travel schedule every year because of the conference they play in, but man, it's just going to be a bunch of one-possession games either way, and I really like an experienced team with experience at quarterback to be able to handle themselves there. A whole lot north of 6.5 wins. That's a totals bet that I've already put in for myself. Nebraska, also probably underrated still. Now, they're a 5-7 team last year whose over-under win total for this year is 7.5. So let's dive in a little bit. Go over and look at S&P Plus in the preseason. Number 6 defense coming into 2024. They've got an elite defensive staff. I've talked about them ad nauseum. You know how much respect I have for Tony White and the guys up there. They're number 3 in the country in returning production this upcoming year. And the only offensive production they lost is quarterback, and they needed upheaval at the quarterback position. Insert Dylan Raiola. He's going to be a true freshman. He'll take his lumps. But the way I look at it is if I get B- to B level quarterback play from Raiola, man, that's good enough to win more than 7.5 games. And also, they miss Michigan, they miss Oregon, and they miss Penn State in the regular season. So I expect fairly significant improvement as well as record improvement for Matt Rule and the boys this year. They open against UTEP, got Colorado week 2, and that's going to have a lot of eyeballs on it. But like I said, I think Sunday night, or maybe Tuesday when we did the extra podcast, listen to the beginning of their schedule. They got UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois, at Purdue, Rutgers, at Indiana. Those are 7 games that they are likely to be favored in. Let me check myself on that. At least 6 of 7, perhaps all 7, they may be favored in. It gets a lot tougher at Ohio State, UCLA, at USC, Wisconsin, at Iowa. Kind of like an Ole Miss schedule a couple of years ago where you wondered, can they just take care of the over early? Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But, man, I think Nebraska probably a little bit underrated. Georgia Tech, I could also call a little bit underrated. Now, difference with Georgia Tech is the schedule is it's pretty stiff. I'm not going to lie. Plus, they've got Georgia every single year, but they were 7-6 last year. Their over/under win total's 5.5. I think due in large part to how tough it is. Haynes King is still there. That's their quarterback. Their offense top 10 in returning production this year. Pretty deep wide receiver room. Defense was bad last year. 123rd in yards allowed, I believe, something like that. So they overhauled their staff on the defensive side. They overhauled their roster on the defensive side. So kind of the inverse of Nebraska in that if I can get, C+ to B- level play defensively, then I should be good enough to win over 5.5 games. I know what's happening right now. USC fans are listening and saying, oh. So you're just going to blindly assume that they get a lot better because they made moves defensively and we don't? We're going to have this out, you and I. No, I'm not blindly assuming. I'm saying you guys aren't trying to win 6 games out there. Georgia Tech's trying to win 6 games. That would be the over. And so it's a little bit lower bar to clear here. This is the part, if you're new to the show, where I hope to know the audience so well, I just know what they're saying. I know what my USC fans are saying right now because some of us aren't even on speaking terms. That's a long summer, so we'll be fine, but not even on speaking terms right now. So don't freak out if you think I'm talking to myself and having a conversation with myself. It just sounds that way. That's not actually what's happening. But yeah, schedule is tough. You just saw it there. Colin showed it to you. But it's doable. I think it's doable. Iowa State, absolutely they're going over 7.5. This is a Matt Campbell revenge year. A good old MCRY, as we call it in the business. S&P Plus just flat out has him 22nd in the preseason. I don't know where the JP poll has him yet, but just to give you an idea, in S&P Plus terms, Iowa State is sandwiched between teams like USC and Miami coming into this year. Did you know that? Do you think that about them? Number 2 team in the country returning production. Top 5 both sides of the ball in returning production. The vibes in the building are immaculate. Spent a whole day up there last month. Loved everything I experienced. Love everything I felt. Rumors circulating on the internet about Rocco Becht and Sydney Sweeney. And I am here to baselessly fan the flames of those rumors because I don't care if they're false, okay? Because when it comes to my quarterback, and Rocco Becht is my quarterback, I will propagate any online rumor it takes for us to win football games. And by us, I mean us. Because it is a we year. It's not a they, okay? They went 7-6 last year. We could win the Big 12 this year. And lastly, I want you to just take one eye, pick which one, take one eye, just keep it on USF. Because there's that, every year you start to hear a faint drum beat, kind of a hoof beat off in the distance, and you start to think to yourself, who is that? Well, this year, it's USF. USF won 7 games last year. That's tied for most since 2017. Hey, played Alabama tight as well. Probably one of the more hideous football games I've seen in the modern era, but at least played them close. So, I don't have an over-under win total for him because FanDuel hadn't put it out yet. Don't worry, that will happen very soon, I am told. USF, I would like to ask you guys, especially in my G5 community, what is the most underrated G5 team coming into 2024? Let's move it along. I want you to know that over the next, probably early next week, maybe even on the Sunday show, but definitely early next week, if not on the Sunday show, I will have an announcement about next week because the Pate State Speaker Series is not done. We just took a week off. Gelby has to go home and charge his batteries. Literally, they're dead. And so we're going back out on the road. Oh, we got a big one next week. And so I'll be announcing that in due time. And I am going to once again remind you guys, the way this works is not I spin the globe, point my finger on the map and say, oh, I think we want to go here today. Just knock on the door. Hey, let us in to do an entire live show here and have your coach on for 30 or 40 minutes. That's not the way it works. They got to invite us. 15 already have, and we've put some really, really good shows in the can, and we've had several head coaches on the show. And if someone doesn't want to participate, that's cool. But there may be some who do want to and just don't get that's how it works. So number one, I'm reminding all SIDs and head coaches who listen, that's how it works. And number two, if you're a fan base and you've been asking me, when are you coming to our school? You probably should redirect that energy to tagging your folks on the socials and asking them when we're coming to their school because they've got the answer, not me. We got several big ones lined up already, but it's a long summer, so we'll see what else we can line up. The mood tracker is back tonight because I think it's time to talk about Ohio State. Went up there and got a good pulse of their program the other day, and the mood tracker is basically when we just take the temperature of the fan base, and this one's really easy, although I regret to inform you Jesse came up with the actual phrase. The mood for Ohio State is sick of silver. What a first world problem to be able to suffer from. There's literally only one way to get better than silver. And Michigan's had it the last 3 years. So they got to do something about that. But the fan base is who we're talking about here. Fan base, I think, is being mischaracterized nationally a little bit, and I'll get to that in a second. But you got to be careful with the way you talk about this whole thing. I think sometimes there is a tendency that when you've gotten close repeatedly to where you want to be, that's like the starting point. It's just assumed that we're going to get at least this far next year. And when we were up in Columbus last week, I want to say it was, I sat down with Ryan Day. We had him on the show. We actually talked about that very thing.
There's a train of thought out there sometimes in like preview magazine culture that if you came really close the year before, people speak as if that's where you're starting the next year, right, and you just got to take that one final step. In reality, it's like you try and climb Everest, and you get 500 feet from the summit, don't make it. You got to start over from base camp the next year. So I walk around this building like I certainly don't sense any entitlement or anything like that whatsoever. But how hard is it to make sure guys understand last year's team was last year's team? Right. This year's team, you guys could go 8-4. Forget about starting as an 11-win team.
The easy thing to do is, well, let me just fast forward and get all the way to the end of the next season. It doesn't work that way. You have to build. And I think now more than ever, the teams that build that foundation the right way with fundamentals, with techniques, find their identity and get really good at it are going to be the ones that are going to be best at the end of the season. The reason I say that is in the past when you got into the playoff system, you had about a month to prepare for that bowl game. And I always felt like, if you gave me a month, I could really go to work. I could really focus on, give me a couple weeks to really dive into this schematically. We can practice the heck out of it. I remember going into the Georgia game a couple years ago. We had like 1,400 snaps going into that game in the bowl practice.
Yeah.
And now that's not going to be the case. It's more like the NFL playoffs. You get kind of the wild card week. But those games are going to keep coming fast. And so you have to make sure you're building the foundation the right way and building momentum with your team. Because at the end, the team that has the best fundamentals, the best techniques, knows who they are, is going to win and sustain in the playoffs.
So there's that. Beyond all that, though, I think a lot of people are looking at Ohio State and the transfer portal guys they added, and you should be because they're studs. But the guys they convinced to come back, I think is the biggest story in the Big Ten this year. JTT, Jack Sawyer, Travion Henderson, like Emeka Egbuka, Ward, a lot of those guys could have been having their name called in the NFL draft this past week, and they all came back. and it's a recipe to win a championship. It's not a prediction. That's a recipe. That's a foundation that you need to win a championship. Then you add in the transfer portal guys on top of that. But, dude, the difference, at least what I picked up on from what the public talking point is about Ohio State versus what they talk about in the building there is they're happy to have the transfer portal guys. But, dude, those guys coming back is monumental. They know it. That's why it's all in for 2024. I mean, as all in as a major program can be, they are for 2024. Now, I said I thought the fan base was being mischaracterized a little bit a second ago. What I mean by that is more and more as the season approaches, you're going to hear things like, oh, Ohio State fans have Ryan Day on the hot seat. Oh, if he loses to Michigan again, they're going to run him out of town. Fair enough. Say whatever you want to. Here's what I'd ask. Find me the Ohio State fans who are saying that. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying we may be making a mountain out of a molehill a little bit in terms of letting the fringe minority opinion carry the day in lieu of the overwhelming consensus up there, which is we got one of the best coaches in the country. We've come close. We're going to tee it up and try it again this year, but we're not going to go full 5-alarm freak out and call for the head of an 11-1 coach if that's how our season goes. So I'm asking any Ohio State fans who legitimately feel like that, who feel that no matter what else is accomplished, if we fall short of a title this year or fall short of beating Michigan, probably still make the playoffs, and then whatever happens, if that goes down this year, he ought to be out of a job. Show yourselves to me. I really want to see how many people feel that way, because I have a feeling the sample size is a lot smaller than we're being led to believe. Jesse, Colin, I do want to let you know one thing. Dellinger just broke a story that I irresponsibly was reading on my phone during that SOT. So we're going to do this Georgia segment, and then I am going to ask you to basically keep a generic lower third like you have on the screen right now, and I'm going to react to that at the end of the show, which is in like 5 minutes, because this is a bombshell report, and I am not about to wait until Sunday to talk about this. Our friends at FanDuel can cap many things. There is no way that they could put odds on which big story comes next in college football, although I'd like to see them try. Even they may not be good enough for that. But what they are good enough to do is they are good enough to, number one, be our exclusive odds provider, and we salute them. We appreciate that. They are also good enough to put out odds on pretty much everything you could ever hope to bet in the month of May. It sounds like a Temptation song, maybe the unreleased fourth verse of My Girl. It's all at FanDuel. You got over under win totals. You got odds to make or miss the playoff. You've got not hypothetical. You got games of the year already over there. Heisman odds are soon to be released, if not already. So we've got a lot of stuff over there. Peruse at your leisure. Take your time. Pick your spots. Don't be blowing that allowance money in May. And come to think of it, if it's your allowance money you're betting, don't. Just put it in your pocket and wait a couple of years. That account probably doesn't need to be opened right now. But FanDuel makes a lot of stuff possible for us. Had a really good meeting with them last week. Oh, the ideas. So many ideas. If we put tires on even 25% of these ideas, it's going to be a really fun show this fall. Okay, let's move it along. I had a Twitter question, and then I thought the show was going to be over, but Ross Dellinger saw fit to make things a little bit difficult for us. Look, hey, I love these guys breaking stories. Just don't do it while we're on air. Terrible business. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. Kale Ripken, not to be confused with Cousin Cal. Kale hit me and said, hey, is it time for us to start viewing Kirby Smart in Georgia as we did when we looked at Bama and Saban and just expect the Dogs to be national champs every couple of years? Hey, on a related note, a little golf clap for Kirby Smart. He is no longer hurting for money because today he signed a 2-year extension and is now a $13 million per year earner. So, now that Kirby Smart is out of the soup line and is comfortable in his skin up there financially at Georgia, let us answer the question. I wouldn't even say every couple of years. I don't look at it as, are they going to win the title every year? That's not the way I looked at Bama. That's not the way I look at Georgia. I ask, are you going to be in it every year? And not only will Georgia be in it every year, Georgia will be the favorite or co-favorite to win the title every year. To me, it's always been about how many opportunities, how many swings can you give yourself? Like Ole Miss this year is going to give themselves a swing. They're going to be in the playoff hunt, playoff conversation. Georgia is that every year. So if you guarantee yourself that you're going to be within swinging, within arm's reach every year, and you recruit like they do, and you're as intense as they are, and you're as attention to detail oriented as they are, the ball will bounce your way. You got better players than most everyone does. You got a better staff than most everyone does. You've got a bigger budget than most everyone does. You've got so many things in your favor that if you keep taking swings, you'll hit. You'll land a couple of them. You may land several of them, but you'll at least land a couple of them. So that's how I view them. That's how I viewed Saban and Bama. Here's what's interesting. When Saban got to Bama, there was a giant already in the conference. It was Florida, and it was Urban Meyer. And it took Saban 1 year to get his program to where they could go toe-to-toe with Florida, and they lost the first time they faced him, and then they beat him the next year and went to win a national championship. But then Urban Meyer was out of the league 1 year later. So it felt like at the time we were setting up for this decade-long battle of Meyer-Saban, Saban-Meyer every year. Well, that's not the way it turned out. And we kind of got a longer version of that with Saban and Kirby, but we still didn't have the runway on it that we really could have had. Like if Saban's 5 years younger, or maybe if the structure of the sport doesn't change and he wants to stick around a little bit longer, who knows what the next 5 years would have held. But we saw him go head-to-head, what was it, I think 5 times or something like that. The most recent time, we saw Bama win the SEC championship game against him. The time before that, Georgia won the national title against Alabama. But now that Saban is gone from Alabama, you just wonder, who's the thorn in Georgia's side? Who is it? It doesn't always come from where you expect, by the way. Like Gus Malzahn had more success against Saban than pretty much anyone else did. Hugh Freeze bit him a couple of times. So it's not always the team that's recruiting heads up against you. Who's it going to be? Would it be like Josh Heupel? Could it be Kalen DeBoer in Alabama? Could Kalen DeBoer in Alabama maintain the trajectory that Saban had Alabama on? Like, yeah, that's a possibility. But outside of that, I just wonder if we fast forward 5 years and Georgia hasn't won another title. The odds are against that. But if they haven't won another title, what would the reason be? I would guess the reason would be more likely to be internal than anything that's happened on the field. That would be my guess. But yeah, absolutely, I would look at Georgia and say odds-on favorite to win it every year. They're the odds-on favorite to win it this year, I believe. And then you put yourself in position and you take your swing. All right, so I gotta get you this. I don't think we've done this in a while. We have not had news break on the show in a while, but it's happening. This is the nature of doing a live show. Wouldn't have it any other way. Ross Dellinger, breaking news from Yahoo Sports. Details on a college model that may cost power schools $300 million each over the next 10 years. There is a story right now, yahoosports.com. Scholarship expansion, new roster limits, a $17 to $22 million revenue sharing cap per year, $2.9 billion in damages owed, a deadline in 40 days, implementation no sooner than the fall of 2025. I told you this was coming and it wasn't going to take long. So this right here is what we've been waiting on. This is a fundamental, like ground-altering moment for college football and college athletics. I talked to a high-level athletic director a couple of weeks ago and said, this stuff's happening. They've known this is coming for a little while, so it's not taking anyone by surprise. But I said, that stuff's happening. What happens with Title IX? What happens with the non-revenue sports, the Olympic sports? And he said, I don't know. And this is one of the bigger names in the industry. They don't know. Even as this story is breaking right now, we are looking at fundamentally altering what you have known and what I have known college football to be. Do you understand what I just said? A $17 to $22 million revenue share cap. What I just described to you is a salary. So we were talking about Georgia a second ago. Instead of us sitting here and talking about NIL, which will still exist to a certain degree, imagine Kirby Smart sitting there with $20 million to spend on a roster per year, and then Hugh Freeze has that, and then Josh Heupel has that, and Shane Beamer has that. Why do they have it? Not because they fundraised. It's because they're in the SEC, and that's the money that's being distributed to them to use to pay football players. What? College football? Yeah, that's what we're going to call this now. The deadline and the implementation. I didn't say 4 years. I said the deadline is in 40 days, and the implementation is no sooner than the fall of 2025. This is next year this stuff is coming. It's not down the road, which is one of the things I keep trying to emphasize anytime we've talked about this. It's not on the horizon. It's in your face. It's just you've been driving through fog for a little while, so you didn't know it was right here, but it's here. It's arrived. It's at your door right now. The other thing to keep in mind when you talk about shifting over to an actual revenue distribution model is this stuff is going to be jarring, but one of the themes that I've tried to weave into the shows anytime we've talked about this and how inevitable it is it's not going to be the same in a sense that the sport, outside of Saturdays is going to look different. Saturdays in the fall, it really comes down to, number one, how pristine does that remain? And that's me selfishly talking. But number two, I want you to think about this. So right now, a lot of you are bent out of shape that there's so much player movement. I am too. I don't like it either. And it's not that I don't like that the players are able to do it. I don't like that we don't have a more firm structure in college football. So it's not a blame the players thing. It's a blame folks who dropped the ball for 30 or 40 years thing. So bottom line is, you don't like a lot of it. I don't like a lot of it. You've been asking, how do we fix it? Well, the way that you fix it is not to pass rules against guys moving around. Just like the bowl opt-out thing. I saw some headline the other day where somebody was foolish enough to think you're about to pass a rule that makes guys play in bowl games. Forget about that. Like, how many times do you guys need to get beat over the head in court to realize it's a dead end? Stop. You don't have to do it that way. The way you do this, when you're handing out revenue share, is you dictate the terms of the revenue share. And so there's a way to incentivize. Instead of putting a knife to the back of someone's neck and trying to force them to do something you want them to do, put a carrot on a string and put it in front of their face. Incentivize them with money. That's how you do it. If I'm a freshman at Pate State and I know I've got a certain dollar amount coming my way, but I know it incrementally grows if I'm a sophomore at Pate State and a junior at Pate State, and there's a big payoff if I'm a senior at Pate State. What if I graduate and get my degree at the same school I committed to 4 years ago? No one said it's illegal for me to transfer in that scenario. No one even tried to stand in my way. But I did have it explained to me on this piece of paper I signed when I was a freshman that if you leave for reasons that are other than what are spelled out in your scholarship, coaches leaving you and whatnot, if you just decide to leave on your own, then you'll still get paid, actually. You just won't make nearly as much as you would have in this new backloaded incentive structure. That's how I think this should be done. That's how I think it very well may be done, and we'll see. But a lot of these details coming out right now are fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And don't just gloss over scholarship expansion and new roster limits. Let's see where that goes. Not a lot's been made of that, but that's been something. That's been something that keeps getting brought up to me. I haven't broached it a lot on this show because I don't know the details, but we're about to find out. We're about to find out a whole heck of a lot, you and I, about what the next 30 years of this sport are going to look like. Don't know much other than they're going to look radically different than the previous 30 years. But don't worry, we'll make it. We'll make it together. That's our show for tonight. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and podcast if you haven't already, because that is the way we keep this free. For Director Colin, for Producer Jesse, I'm Josh Pate. We'll be right back here same time Sunday night. Until then, take care and God bless.